Hi everybody, I'm Rebecca Keppel. I'm here for LDRS Creative today. I have a new card featuring their Daisy Daisy stamp and die set as well as their Lantern hybrid ink. I'd never used hybrid ink to do no line coloring before, so I thought I would give it a try, and it turns out that it works great and perfectly. So let's get started. Let's take a look at the Daisy Daisy stamp set. It is a cling mounted stamp set. There's also the LDRS Creative stamping mask paper that I'm going to use with the coordinating Daisy Daisy dies to create some masks that then I'll be able to stamp my flower and my stem, and it'll look more natural because the flower will be in front of the stem. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is grab my stamp set and my LDRS Creative Hybrid ink in the Lantern color. I have a piece of watercolor cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm not going to do any watercoloring, but I am going to use Polychromos pencils from Faber Castell, and you need to have some texture in order to put down layers of those colored pencils. So I'm going to stamp a bunch of the daisies on this card front. I'm going to color them all in a little differently for each flower. For this one, I did want to have the stem, so I am using the masking paper for the flower and the petals. I'm just going to remove that paper. The thing that's great about LDRS Creative stamping mask paper is that it's nice and thick, so you don't have to worry about using it again and again. If you wanted to mask off a bunch of different areas with the same mask, it's not going to get really heavy coated with that ink because it's much thicker than traditional masking paper. But it die cuts beautifully, so I'm just going to use the die cut piece as my mask there. I'm not going to fussy cut around and worry about that, and it turns out beautifully on top of that stem and just gives it a more natural look so you don't see the lines cutting through each other. Now I'm going to use my Misti to complete the stamping here, and that's because it's difficult to stamp on watercolor paper, so sometimes I do have to double stamp to get a good impression. Now to get started with the coloring, I am going to lay down some highlights with the white pencil first. I'm going to speed this up because there's nothing really fancy that I'm doing here. I'm just laying down color. Then I'm going to take care of the leaves and the stems using a combination of really light spring greens so that it really blends well with that lantern stamping that we did. And that's, I think, what you need to remember when you're using hybrid ink to do no line coloring is just try to coordinate the color of the ink to most of what you're going to be coloring on your card, because you won't be able to see it very much. You can see that what I'm doing here to color the flower is I'm going over the individual lines with one color, then coming in with a slightly darker color and a slightly darker color. So I like to use, similar to when I'm coloring with Copics, at least 3 colors of pencils, if not at least definitely 2 colors, just so that you get lots of blending and layers. Once all the coloring is done, I went to the Just Because stamp set to stamp my sentiment, and I'm going to use the LDRS Creative Black. It's called Raven, that hybrid ink, and it stamps beautifully on the watercolor paper and over my pencil coloring. So you can see that some of that sentiment is right over those flowers, and it turns out beautiful. So you can definitely use those hybrid inks on top of pencil coloring. I decided to trim my panel down to about, let's see, it's about 4 1/4 by about 5 1/4. This way I could layer this card panel on some spring green cardstock, and it would just peek out at the top and the bottom. And I just liked the way it pulled together that green because I don't use it a lot on the coloring. So I now have it in 3 spots on my card, top, bottom, and then that stem. And finally, I decided to use a little bit of Wink of Stella, especially on that little butterfly that I did stamp. It comes in the same stamp set. They have a little butterfly. They also have a few little dots and swirls that you can fill up your card panel with. So I'm going to just add a little sparkle and shine to the centers of my flowers, to those little dots that go throughout the card, and then to the butterfly as well. And you can see that shine there. For a little more dimension and sparkle and shine, I'm going to use some Tonic Studios Nouveau Jewel Drops. These dry translucent and dimensional. So I'm going to add those to some of those little dots that I stamped from the stamp set, and also to the butterfly wings. Just adds a nice touch to some of those areas because this is otherwise basically a flat card. So it is nice to add a little bit of dimension and shine when you put so much effort into the coloring, but you don't want to really embellish it otherwise because you want those flowers to really stand out. But it's nice to have another little touch of blue as well because I did color that butterfly blue. So again, I'm trying to have at least those additional colors in 3 spots because most of the card is yellow. I'm just going to tap the back just to round out those dots as well. And that completes my card. Just have to adhere it down to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding note card and you're done. So if you're interested in any of the supplies that I used, as always, they will be linked down below so you can check them out. If you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, you can do that here. You can also check out my blog for more information, and I'll have links to a couple of other videos that you might be interested in as well. I want to thank you so much for stopping by today. Have a wonderful day.